All right, everybody, we are on and we are live.
Hey, good afternoon, beautiful people. Thank you for tuning in to our mental health discussion regarding the topic of parental alienation. My name is Joseph Bosley. I'm one of the co-founders of the Men of High Integrity and Quality Network here in Nashville, Tennessee. And I want to just take a moment of acknowledgement here for some of the groups that came together to put this panel together. It's a really important topic that we know is actually under-addressed and under-recognized in our community. So the group locally, the Black Mental Health Alliance, founded by our very own technician and tech support, Mr. Benaias Isaias. I know we have the group Hood Medicine coming to us from, are they on the East Coast, Benaias?
It's Hood Medicine is a nonprofit public health collective focused on health equity and reducing the impact of disinformation targeting Black, Indigenous people of color.
That is correct. I also know we have the SITM Inc. I don't want to mess up the acronym. Is that stuck in the middle?
Stuck in the middle.
Whose mission is to help empower, strengthen, and improve children's mental health by providing professional education and other resources to the families. And last, certainly not least, we have a group, Benaias, I don't want to quote their name wrong. I know they also sponsored us on social media.
Insight Counseling?
Yeah, a counseling group.
It's probably Insight Counseling.
Is it Insight Counseling?
And that's the group that one of our panelists, Monet, is a part of.
Well, perfect. So those are our sponsors for today. Thank you to all our sponsors in making this panel possible across the nation, across the Southeast and East Coast region. And without further ado, I just want to open the floor for each of our panelists to introduce themselves and speak briefly on their background with this particular topic of parental alienation. So with that said, we're going to go to you, Monet.
Okay, thank you. My name is Monet. I have a bachelor's from Alabama A&M, proud HBCU graduate. I have a master's from Lipscomb University, which is a Christian university. I am a clinical director at Insight Counseling Centers, and I am also a therapist there. So I have the experience as a clinical director to be able to the child. I am a therapist, obviously, who sees clients who are divorced, and I am a friend, and I have friends and community members who have had these experiences. So I have a little bit of input from each of those places. All you need from me?
That's spot on. Thank you, Monet. Ms. Emily Booth.
Hi, my name is Emily Booth, and I am a mental health therapist in Franklin, Tennessee, and I have a private practice. And I too divorced, and my parents were high conflict divorce. And from all of the pain that I went through as a child, I decided to get into this field and work individuals and families who are struggling with alienation and other high conflict issues. And I testify in courts and am Rule 706 family therapist and help families reunite, hopefully after alienation. And then I'm a mom, and I have my own experience with parental alienation, and my children lived with their dad and left when they were in 4th and 6th grade. So I know it personally, and then I know it professionally, and have dedicated my life to helping families overcome their pain.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes.
How you guys doing? My name is Bernard Holmes. I'm a father, brother, uncle, son, community member. Graduated from Fisk University. I work for Vanderbilt University Medical Center right now currently. That's the financial aid and coordinator for the Center of Allied Health. Community-wise, I work with several organizations, including Men's IQ. I also do a lot of work in nonprofit organizations, range from Unstoppable Hands, which is a nonprofit that focuses on delivering goods to underprivileged communities, especially like things like hygiene, soaps, underwear, things of that nature. Also work with a couple of churches, a lot of nonprofits in Nashville, Tennessee, especially on the north and south side. In terms of parental alienation, I'm actually currently dealing with something from the mother of my children. They no longer live with me right now. I'm in the process of obtaining them right now. And yeah, so this subject is near and dear to my heart. It's definitely something that's relevant in the Black community, especially in this community right here in South Nashville, North Nashville. We all know the trials and tribulations of alienation and how it can be detrimental to our youth. So I'm here to fight and talk about the subject and hopefully gain more knowledge to help you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. And guys, I just want to confirm, we do have one more panelist that's joined us virtually. Is that April? Is April Payne online?
Absolutely, and I will switch it to April now.
Everyone, my name is April. I'm actually the co-founder as well of Stuck in the Middle. The mission has already been stated, so I won't repeat it. But first, I want to thank Ben for it's a very important discussion, very important topic. And to me, as growing, I was a victim of it as well, a divorced parent now. We haven't had any discussion or appealing, or that hasn't come up in my situation. Imagine just the way we are not co-parent, but just has. But on a personal note, I can speak as well as that we intend to organization and our parent, we move forward in our organizations that support our mission.
Back. And it was a little bit of choppy, I won't lie, but we're going to continue going.
Wonderful.
Sorry about that.
So just to clarify our terms for today, because I want to speak about what we're discussing and what we're not discussing. We know there can be a lot of challenges and issues within relationships, within co-parenting, and we're specifically not speaking about topics regarding sexual abuse, regarding any sexual misconduct, or even conduct between a parent that's not involved in that child's life because they chose to give them up at adoption. We're specifically talking about a situation with parental alienation where one parent may have access to their children, but due to proceedings with legal representatives, due to simple or not even simple, but direct choice to avoid and remove that parent's interaction, the other parent has not been able to maintain a healthy relationship with their children. This usually happens when there's a divorce or parents that have not had any formal agreement on how they're going to co-parent. And of course, in the I'm not going to say few, but those rare and unfortunate cases where one parent may not be aware that they have a child. Parent chooses to proceed with access to their child without letting the other parent know that they conceived a child together. And so just wanted to clarify that. Didn't want us to be preventative in the opportunities of exploring side tangents, because those are very important topics that we also need to explore when the time is right around mental health. But want to stick to the agenda today. Additionally, I want to just give notice and reference to the Hardaway. Thank you for your support. Brother Nehemiah Hardaway is actually the individual that brought this topic to us, and the Black Mental Health Alliance as well as MenIQ, and made it such a high priority on our agenda. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, he's not able to join us today, but we're going to continue the mission, and we know we're going to continue this conversation in future series. With that said, I'm also going to do another note of just how the flow of the day is going to go. We do have a media presentation, particularly a PSA that we want to share with our audience. We'll dive into that shortly after we just expound a little bit further on the topic of parental alienation. And we do want to have a moment, rather an opportunity for Q&A between our audience members. So please write your questions down, write your comments down, because we want to engage those questions, those inquiries. But without further ado, I just want to pivot over to my panel here and ask. I mentioned a couple of some of the circumstances in which parental alienation may be experienced. Could you think of, or rather elaborate on some of the circumstances in which parental alienation may occur? Maybe even without with both parents around. Someone told me something about speaking poorly about the other parent and diminishing their value. Is that also qualified as parental alienation?
I would say so.
You say so?
I would specifically say that that's a way that you can alienate alienate the child from one parent, coming from their parent, because the parent's view or message or narrative about the other parent is going to influence the child, right? The child is learning from what the parent says. And so that child is going to take what they learn, and it's going to be embedded in their heart and their mind. And that's going to influence how they see the other parent, how they speak to the other parent, how they view the other parent. So it's definitely a way to alienate that child from the parent, coming from one parent to the other. Personally, my parents were divorced, and my mom did a fantastic job of not speaking at all about her feelings about the divorce, her feelings about the alienation that was going on in their relationship. She didn't speak of it until I was good and grown, until I was able to ask questions about the situation that she felt comfortable adult to discuss. And that was helpful. It allowed me to have my own relationship with my mother, to establish it, and allow him to establish his relationship with me without having anything premeditated, any premeditated thoughts or feelings about him. I just knew what I knew directly from him. I'm not saying that to say that everything is great between my father and I, but I'm saying that it was authentic and didn't have an outside influence.
So you would say, even though your parents were separated, the effectiveness of their co-parenting experience did not result in a parental alienation in your brain?
It did not directly. I said kind of at the top when I was introducing myself that mine is a little left of the middle of the definition, and I meant by that my mom didn't alienate me from my dad or my dad from me, but my dad chose to alienate himself from me and chose to alienate himself from my brother, right? With my brother, it was at the end of their marriage. My mom got pregnant. My father was upset about that happening and didn't want her to keep the child, and she chose to keep the child. And so he chose to alienate himself from my brother, and he chose to alienate himself from our relationship. So, no, not directly as the definition states, but it was a choice that was made.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Monet.
No problem.
Emily, April, do y'all have anything to add to the scope of parental alienation?
So when there's a diagnosis for parental alienation, and we use a 5-factor model to diagnose parental alienation, and there's a great resource, pasg.org, in which Dr. Bill Burnett started, and Amy Baker. And those two really have offered so many resources to understand parental alienation. But when we look at alienation and we're trying to determine if a child has actually been alienated from a parent, first we have to look at if there was a prior positive relationship. So if a child used to be close to a parent but is no longer, so that's the first factor. The second factor that we want to look at is there's no abuse or neglect. So there cannot be abuse or neglect because, as we know, when parents are married, children sometimes are close to their abusers. When they get divorced, now they've got the option. So if they choose not to be with a parent that was abusive or neglectful, that's not alienation. And that's a really important factor because neglect is the absence of care. So we know what abuse looks like, but sometimes we don't know what neglect looks like. So important factor. So the two factors so far, we have the absence of abuse and neglect, and then also we have where there was a prior positive relationship. So then the other thing we look at, the third factor, is that the child doesn't want to have anything to do with the parent, and they are now resistant. So we were once close and now we're not. Then the fourth factor is that we look at 8 characteristics of a child, their behavior. And this is kind of what Monet was talking about, I think. And additionally, then we've also got 5 characteristics of the alienator, the parent who alienates. Actually, I think you were talking about the parent. And so we've got children's behavior and then parents' behavior. You throw all that in, and if we have 4 out of the 5, then more than likely it's alienation. And then we have 3 levels. We have a mild and a moderate and a severe level of parental alienation.
Wow, and you said the doctors, the specialists that actually organized this framework were Bill Burnett, and was it Amy Baker?
Yes, Dr. Amy Baker and Dr. Bill Burnett, and you can find all kinds of resources on pasg.org, and I'll make sure that that's correct, but I'm pretty sure that is. They have a list of therapists who specialize in alienation. They have all kinds of research. Dr. Baker's book is on there. It's just a great place to go. And then also you can find all kinds of resources on YouTube. Dr. just gave a speech. So it's all over the place. But if you go to PASG, you will be able to find a lot of resources.
Fantastic, thank you. I know we have April and Bernard still. Did y'all, was April ready to share on, expand on the scope of parental alienation?
Yeah, I think she. Go right ahead, April.
Thank you. I just wanted to add regarding the information that she was in. Well, let me believe that parent alienation from a parent, but it can come from a family member, friends that are close to and to the family as well. Particularly when I reflect back, I was growing up. Alienation came from my aunt and uncle. I was raised by neither my biological father. I wasn't in the at all at that particular. I was raised by my mother, basically my grandmother 5, and then I was forced by another family member by my who was only 17 less. But it was what Black family typically do, have the child, another family member, to avoid that did happen up to a certain, where the parent alien, the recollections, that is the associations outside of the well as inside the home discussions about, and there was the negative. I just want to say that it does come from the accident, but it can come from another, because but and it caused me to create this picture of my mom, and not just the mom, but a negative picture of at that particular time at 4, and as the years went on, adolescence age, this esteem, I felt like I wanted, and so forth. So, and then there was, my negative comments about her being alive, reliable. So I just felt like there was no so the parent alien come from the parent situation. The other parent wasn't there. It came from members and other friendly. I think that's all I had to say about them. Yeah, thank you.
Sometimes.
And I can relay some of the message that she was saying. A lot of it was to with the fact that parental alienation doesn't necessarily happen between the parents alone. It can also be other family members. And in her specific incident, it was she was not raised by her parents, and she had members that raised her. And sometimes her parents, particularly, I believe it was her father, or it was mother. Mother wasn't always reliable, so the family would say, "Oh, they would do what we assume is parental alienation as a way of protecting her, from getting her hopes up about mom coming to visit her or mom coming to do that." So there was unintended, family parental alienation that occurred, not from other, parents, but from the, extended family, who actually were trying to protect her from getting hurt. So thank you for that perspective, April.
Copy. Thank you for that, Bernard, for that relay. And Bernard?
I'll keep on brief. So my train of thought in thinking about parental alienation is basically when one parent or one force makes the other parent seem incompetent or at a disadvantage, whether indirectly or directly. So I'll give you guys an example. I'm currently dealing with the mother of my children. Who actually moved, flight kids, moved to North Carolina with all 3 of my children, put them in school, put them in after school programs, there, got a job and everything. When I had everything situated in Nashville right now, so it's really disheartening knowing that if individuals have the heart to be parents, are taken away from that liberty. Because, I would understand if a parent didn't want to be there, but if a parent is intentionally stopping somebody from building a relationship with their child, I think that's inhumane. So parental alienation is definitely near and dear to my heart. I love the fact that I'm learning more about it. I think Emily brought a great description of parental alienation and the 5 steps behind it. So yeah, that's what I'm experiencing, and that's how I identify parental alienation.
Wow, thank you. Y'all said so much and really are instructing kind of the line of questions we're going to go through. Just to reiterate, we are going to have a Q&A. We have a number of questions that we're sharing online as well as in the room. For those in person, we have just discussion questions on the board. But before we dive into all of that, I do know we have a media presentation. Is that correct?
Yes.
So let's switch on over. Let's take a quick break and take about, how long is that? 7 minutes, 8 minutes?
7 minutes.
Perfect. I have a 7 minutes video, and we're gonna watch that and hear from some other testimonies around parental alienation.
Memphis, Tennessee, primarily raised by my mother, and she had 3 other children, so 4 of us total. Single family household. She worked 2 or 3 jobs to take care of us. Grew up without knowing who my father was. My other siblings, of course, know their dads. My oldest brother's father lives in Memphis. He visits frequently when he's here or visiting in Memphis. And then my other 2 siblings, they know their father. And so it was a little bit disheartening growing up, especially being very little and not knowing why I didn't have a dad. And so that part of my life was very difficult, just being that, my siblings had father figures in their lives, people they can talk to, call. Christmas was always great for them, where I didn't have that luxury. I just had my mom. And so not knowing then at the time was very difficult to try and translate those feelings, trying to cope with, I don't know my dad, I don't have a dad. I do remember at one point when I did ask the question, we were in a grocery store and I got popped in the mouth. And that was kind of like very shocking for me because I was never really truly disciplined physically as a child. But it was very alarming that you don't ask that question. And so growing up, it was very hard to ask her or ask my mom that question again until I became an adult. And at that time, my father was no longer living, we found out, and she still did not discuss it. So I think there's some history behind that. But I think when I honestly got into my late 20s and I just kind of reconciled that I'll never know this person, I'll never have an opportunity to get to know this part of my life, I've just kind of moved on from it, just with the knowledge that this door will probably never open again until I recently done Ancestry.com DNA test. It was comforting to know a name. It was comforting to know who he was. I still don't know who he is, but at least to have a name associated with the person. But at this point, it's kind of not like I have a nonchalant attitude. I would like to know more of my siblings, my cousins, all of those things. He's no longer alive, so it's kind of null and void where there's no potential to actually build a relationship with him.
My name is Rashad Donaldson. Early on, I had birth of both of my parents in the household, but they had split and broke up, and I remember going to go move with my mom, and we stayed there for a couple years, and then for some reason that I still don't fully understand or know yet, I moved with my dad, and I lived most of my childhood with my father and my 2 brothers. There was visitation. Like I knew that I went over my mom's house every other week. As a child, I look forward to that because at my mom's house, I didn't have to be so industrious and so disciplined with my activities and chores and studies and, you know, all these things that my dad had for me. I could relax and eat sugary cereal and watch cartoons in my drawers all day if I wanted to. So it was an experience that that I definitely look forward to, and I do remember like the longing and the need to get over there. You know, waiting for my mom to pick me up, looking forward to it, staying up late nights. Some nights she didn't come. In the early years, dealing with my son and his mother, so I knew I had to be a parent. I knew I had to be close, and I wanted to be with my son. But I went to jail for the first time ever in my life, locked up and put behind bars. So it was a traumatizing experience. Dealing with the justice system, going through court, trying not to absorb the negative messaging that the court system has for you as a father who's estranged from your child. You're trying to get back into your child's life.
My name is Vincenta. My dad had been on child support for me since I was about 7. So it wasn't that he didn't know who I was. My mother had somewhat of a traumatic experience growing up. That could have played a part as to why my father wasn't around or why she didn't allow him to be around. Just not trusting men around her child. I love him simply just because that is my father. I don't have any ill feelings towards him just because I'm aware that there's two sides to every story. It wasn't 100% on him just as it wasn't 100% on her. My mother did an absolute wonderful job raising me the best way she could. I think probably the biggest thing that she probably couldn't control is me learning about men and interactions with men and dealing with men. Anything that I've learned about men, whether it relates to relationships or dating, I learned from my peers. And that could be both good and bad.
I look back on the situation not in disdain, but I'm thankful for the amount of growth I was able to achieve, right? And I'm in a place right now where my son lives in the same city as me. My access is unlimited. You see what I'm saying? I'm definitely in his life 100% of the time, and there's more encouragement to be more present. And so flip my whole situation around, right? Will and determination to be in my child's life was something that I kept and held on to. And unfortunately, the system might make it hard for some, but it's not impossible.
I 100% support any parent that wants to try to be in their kid's life. I think it's very important. As a mother myself, I understand that I may be able to raise a gentleman, but I will not be able to raise a boy into a man. There's just some things a single parent can't teach.
Both parents need to come learn, grow, and come together and fix these issues amongst themselves so they can be better for the child.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. That very informative presentation there. Nice. Can you just reiterate? I believe we're still accepting individuals that want to offer testimonials and speak on their experience around parental alienation. How can they get in touch with you or with the program to submit testimonials?
Oh, I mean, if they want to, speak about their experience today, they can go right ahead. But for other times, they can get in touch with us. My email is info@bmhanashville.com. So you can reach out to us, and we'll definitely make sure we can connect with you and get your testimony.
So email, set up testimonial interview at info@bmhanashville.com. Wow. So many testimonies today and a lot of questions to explore, a lot of thoughts to unpack. I really want to dive into the impact on children, the impact on the families. Do we find any maybe transgenerational impact with parental alienation? Because I hear a lot of, this was my situation growing up. This was the household I was raised in, and this is what I'm navigating now. Can anybody speak to that? And I don't feel free to speak up. I don't want to police the panel.
Well, for me, I mean, I know that I repeated the pattern. And what happens is that when we're children and we have traumatic events in our life, then it shapes us. The stress hormones shape our brain patterns, and we become accustomed to chaos. And so when we grow up, if we are not taught how to just sit and be still and make good decisions and live within parameters, then we just do what we know, and so we fall into chaos. And so I think it absolutely is a generational issue, because if we don't know different, we can't do different. So I do think that's why education is so important in all of this, so that we can learn how to be mature adults and live relationally with others instead of attracting the chaos and loving the edge. That makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I can piggyback off that a little bit. So my parents, they were together. They're still married. Everything wasn't peaches and creams always. There was some parental alienation in some sort of way, shape, or form, because they didn't know how to deal with their aggression the proper way. So my father would sometimes be upset with my mother, and he would belittle her in front of me and my younger brother. But at the end of the day, they stayed. So I had the mentality where it was like, with the mother of my children, by any means necessary, whether hell or high water, whatever chaos, we're going to try to make it work. But that was the mentality that I took from my parents' relationship, not realizing that, every situation is different. You can put your best foot forward in whatever, but if you don't have another force to actually get towards the same goals as yourself, then you're going to be still doing the same patterns as your parents, because at the end of the day, it's not identifying the real issue. It's not finding ways to deal with anger and how to cope with the other parent instead of lashing out. So I tried my best to fight that and still went through that cycle. So it's pretty fun.
What is important to remember is that children hear and they take in everything that they learn and that they hear and how they're influenced. They take it all in. Some things they're able to throw away and not retain, but they take it all in. So it is important for us to protect what they're hearing and what they're learning, which means sometimes protecting from ourselves. We can have something we want to say about the other parent, about the other child, about the relatives that is not necessary to say in front of the child. It does not mean that it's not true, because it could absolutely be true. So I'll talk about how the relationship with between my parents wasn't necessarily a good one after they divorced, and there were many things my mom could have said that would have been facts, but she did not share them with me because she understood that I'm going to take it in and that I'm going to create a narrative about my father. The narrative that a child creates, we want to think sometimes that a child doesn't understand things, and while they may not understand it, they will create a story in their mind as to what something means. So when a child is not, one of the young ladies spoke about asking her mom about her dad and got slapped in the mouth for it, right? So that mom was saying to her child, we don't speak about it. Well, just because we don't speak about it does not mean that child is going to stop thinking about it or trying to create something in their mind about what that means that father's not around. They will create a story. They will get it from different sources. They may get that story from what's going on with their friends or what's going on with their relatives or what they see on television. And they may think that that's what's happening. And until they hear a different narrative, until they hear something different, this is what they're going to create. So it's just very, very important that we help shape the narrative of our children. when we're talking about the generational part of it, so as a therapist, I have a tool that I use called a genogram. And short story, what a genogram is a family tree that has, besides the names, characteristics or traits about the people, right? So I'm doing a genogram with a client, and we're writing out who's divorced, who's married, how many children, who has addictions, things like that about the different family members, 3 generations above. At the end of it, because this is something that we write out on a big board, at the end of it, we realize for that client, there are not many men on this board. One reason there are not many men is because a lot of the parents were not married. Also, they did not birth a lot of men, so there was a lot of females just in the family. And so the view that this woman, this client got from that is that men are not needed. So generationally, if that woman is going by what happened in the generation, I can parent my child without a man. So that means that she could possibly alienate the other parent because I don't need him. I can do this by myself. So that's how it can look generationally, right? I'm sure that that's not something that she thought of in the front of her mind. It was in the back of her mind, unconscious, that there were no men. But because there wasn't, what messages are you receiving about parenting with a male? Likely not very many.
Relevance. That's a topic we often talk about in IQ, like keeping the Black male relevant in the family. I know we also have April. April, did you want to speak on some of the impacts you're aware of parental alienation?
I definitely to the comment about that hit me as in marriage. One of the things try to break the generational line by being married, keeping the family together. Separated on his own, decided that and move out of the makes or that made difficult because he didn't go to the next town and breaking that generational that was traumatizing for one. I am on my own. He's just over the bridge. Still felt like every night waiting duties they deal and me going and all the reasons that comes with parenting was that was it was a heavy load to carry because why would a parent walk away from their own like from being involved with his he had open out into the court system until him not supporting. That was a route that I was trying not. So breaking that generational curse rather was a struggle for me and moving away from the state made it even more of a I felt like that general curse would not be, because now we do have a barrier between prevent him from seeing the kid or being a part of their daily activity, calling on the phone every day, being actively involved. That was hurt, not just to me, but then why does daddy live and why isn't he taking me to? And so forth. So it's one thing I just done, the children, the parent that's some of those questions, consideration with that. Wanted to comment, mentioned regarding making that claim as a woman when we say we don't can absolutely that statement, good statement, but it wasn't need him to raise children and providing their and I mean food, shelter, the activities, activities. I felt like I struggled. Absolutely. It's not something intentionally that I wore, that I wanted, but it was my mind, like I am that failure. I'm not good. So when I wasn't like, it's just that I need to have absolutely anything that I've had with two, but with I wanted to disturb that for them, that lifestyle. But in itself, just because they do need the male person and a daughter. So my be involved in her the advice. She's going on the prom and okay, interaction with her dad. I just got to remember me that well. So then that.
April, can you hear me?
I just got to remember me that well. So
Yeah, we're still working on that. But the part that I did hear, the part that I did hear.
April, can you hear me?
Just got to remember me that well.
So the part that I did hear, and I want to reiterate, is you tried, really hard to make sure that the generational curse within your own family that you could do is something to prevent it. Another thing that I remember you saying was that you were very intentional about keeping the state out of, your relationship because you knew that, getting the state involved would do further damage to your family than fixing any of the issues in terms of, trying to get the father to be more involved, in the children's life. And I think that's a really important thing to mention because there are a lot of laws and the ways that the state and, plays, it's not really in the benefit of our families. It's not in the benefit of, people's mental health. It's really, oftentimes it's very damaging to everyone who's involved. And so I know that's an important thing. So thank you for mentioning that. And I will pass it back to Joseph.
Thank you for translating, Benai, just because of the technical difficulties. I would ask if there's any way we can potentially get April on a call or with the phone so that we can hear her live time as well. Her story and what she has to share is very important. We're very interested. And I do think it would just assist. And so if you can coordinate that with her, that would be very helpful.
Absolutely.
Also, I wanted to ask and confirm that BMHA, we do have a list of therapeutic resources around mental health on the website, bmha.org, is that correct?
.com.
Sorry.
/resources, yeah.
bmha.com/resources. Because we know the topic today can be very triggering for some people. Please tap into that. Please, it's completely free and available, and we can, regardless of if you have insurance or not, we can connect you to some opportunities. I wanna actually explore a different side of parental alienation, just because I do think we may be one side on the narrative currently. And so for the whole panel, is there any time that you feel that parental alienation may be warranted for the safety of children, and why do you think, whether warranted or not, why do you think parental alienation is such, why is it such an issue this day and age? Why are people actually doing this? What do you think of the motivations? So that's just something I wanted to explore.
I guess I can start off because I'm the one that's least versed in this topic. But what I see is a lot of trauma. It's individuals who dealt with a lot of pain that didn't accurately cope with it themselves. And so instead of like learning about it and treating it and overcoming it, they actually continue the generation curve to make more children and follow the same pattern. Hurt people do hurt people. But it's trauma. It's a lot of trauma that individuals deal with, males and females in this community, and it's not accurately tackled. So a lot of people don't know that there's resources out there to help them out. A lot of people maybe don't have the funds for those resources. Maybe just plain ignorance, don't know. So, yeah, I think that is some of the things that I see, what you guys can tell me, your scope of view.
Well, parental alienation itself is never a good thing. So I think maybe what you're talking about is maybe protection of a child.
Okay.
But parental alienation is unjustifiably trying to make a child detach from a parent, to make a child hate a parent. So that's never a good thing. But to your point, yes, I mean, certainly there are reasons always to protect a child from a parent based on the actions that a parent did themselves. And that's really the distinction. Usually alienation occurs when a parent does want a relationship with a child. The other parent turns the child against that parent. So that answers half of that question.
Yeah, so when it fall within the definition of parental alienation, if there was anything justified.
That's right. That's perfect.
Unjustifiable is the prefix to the whole definition.
That's really the important piece. Yeah.
To the point of protecting a child, right? So I'm gonna beat this dead horse about creating the narrative for the child, right? So if there is a reason, if there's a justifiable reason that you're keeping the child from the other parent, include the child in that conversation, because again, they will create their own story about why that's happening. So for instance, if the other parent is an alcoholic, and that alcoholic is not a functioning alcoholic, obviously we want to protect the child from being in that scenario, in that household. But there is information that you can share with the child that's age appropriate. For whatever age that child is, there is some information that you can share with them to let them know that the reason that they're being kept from that parent is because mommy's not well, mommy needs help. We hope that mommy gets well very soon, and when she does, we want to reconnect you. We are waiting for that day. We want that thing to happen, right? So we are creating that narrative and letting that child know that this is not a hateful thing that we're doing, that this is not a mean-spirited thing that we're doing, but that we care about the other parent, right? Even if you don't, the child does not need to know that. That's not something that needs to be shared with the child, right? Because we're protecting, if you are saying that you're protecting your child from this other parent, again, you may need to protect that child from your feelings and words around the situation also.
Well said. Are we able to get April on the line to speak on this, maybe by call?
Not yet. We can.
Not yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely have a few more. And we have a Q&A component, but was there a specific response that someone, I saw some hands up? State your name.
Sure. My name is Jonathan
my specific question dealing with the topic that's being discussed here is the word justifiable. Because it seems to me that what's justifiable for one parent may not be justifiable for another parent, or may not be justifiable for society. And the person that gets to choose justifiable may be biased. And so maybe I don't want my child to eat meat and you're a meat eater, and that needs to be justifiable to me. Or you're Jewish and we're Baptist, and that's just, so how do we wrap our heads around justifiable in this context?
Great, thank you, Mr. Parrish, for that question there.
I think, I'm sorry. I think that's a fantastic
Yes.
distinction. And I'll let you, because you're talking about the description of it and the
Yeah.
DSM description, so I'll let you.
Sure. Well, justifiable would be when we put a child in the way of harm. And so if the parent is abusive or neglectful, really and when we talk physical, sexual, and psychological abuse, that would be justifiable when a parent does not protect the child. But certainly, and that even goes to your point of, okay, well, that's on a scale, right? Because, a parent has the right to spank a child, and the other parent may say that that's not okay. But we're talking about, abusive psychological and sexual abuse that's really hurting a child, hitting a child, and putting marks on a child. These are kind of the not justifiable. When a parent is drunk and putting a child in the car, we would want to protect the child. But even then, there are measures that a parent can take to provide safety for the child, supervised visitation, where a child is still seeing that parent. So, you do ask a great question. And the other thing we look at is good enough parenting. And because we all have our own issues, everybody's got one. And so, is a parent good enough? That is another thing that we look at. And these are all gray gray answers. But once you start, popping in some of the formulas of parental alienation and the characteristics that go on, we can start to get a diagnosis and see what's, if it's justifiable or not. I don't know if that answers your question, though.
I appreciate you giving.
Trying.
I guess my answer to that would be, what is the intention of the parent? I'll use the example that you said, like maybe one parent is a meat eater, maybe the other parent isn't. It's the parent that says that, okay, my child is allowed to eat meat as long as they get the nutrition that they deserve, that they're supposed to get, and they have the intent to be good for the child. But it's good to have a working relationship with the other parent early to identify those issues so you can eliminate some issues like that in the future. But unfortunately, in the time and age that we live in, sometimes that's over the parent's head all the time. So that is an extremely, extremely good question. But in all honesty, it's all dependent on what's the intent of the child. If it's for betterment and improve the child, I think that the parents can talk about that and develop a solution together. If not, parental alienation, like we said, that's the whole whole part of this, the whole topic of this conversation. So just the intent for the parent.
Okay. Now, I think what I took away from what was said is that justifiable removal has a clear, without a shadow of a doubt, symptom of danger. Like there's danger. This is dangerous. Sexual misconduct of a child, that's dangerous. Immediate removal. This parent is impaired most of the time, whether it's driving or just coming home to be abusive. That is clear danger. And so I appreciate that question, Mr. Parrish. And we understand that we may not exhaust that topic there, but we will carry on and revisit as needed. This is a question that I have to ask because I know so many brothers, some of which can even come here today, struggling with parental alienation. I remember even one of the testimonies we heard in the media presentation spoke about her father not really, he knew she was there and he made attempts to get involved, but I guess she said the letter they sent to get more back in the, it was never delivered. It was never delivered. So my question is this: what are there some common denominators you find in parents, maybe males specifically, that are successfully able to get back in their children's lives versus men that may, or parents, because I do know also women have been victims of parental alienation, parents that are unsuccessful. Are there some common denominators, or is it just basic, you got tenacity and determination, like you just weren't tenacious enough? You know, I find that hard to believe.
Co-parenting is a choice.
Yes.
Both parents have to be willing to do this parenting thing, and co means together.
Copy.
Everyone's not willing to do it, as you mentioned, and the other gentleman mentioned, right? Like some things are not justifiable. Some reasons why people are keeping one child or keeping the child from one parent is not justifiable, right? But it is a choice. And so to your point about what type of effort, I think was the question that you're asking, like how would the parent be able to get in when they're being alienated, is what I heard.
Well, were for the parents that you may have seen be successful in getting back into their children's lives, were there any common denominators in their journey? Did they become like legal, paralegal professionals? Like they had to get really sad, or maybe it was they had to maybe be, I hate the term finesser, but they had to be very, very experienced in stroking the ego of the parents, saying, hey, look, I understand. And look, I just want to spend some time with our child, to the point that like they were calming down. I don't know what creates the success. I know a lot of people that are on the side of not being successful, getting back into children's lives.
I'm a marriage and family therapist.
Yes.
What that means is I can see individuals, but I also am trained specifically to deal with conflict that happens in marriage and families, right? When we're dealing with conflict, the key is that you are not only doing what's good for you, but you're also doing what's good to and for the other person. So maybe I don't want to say please, but if I know that please is going to get someone to give the response that I need, I'm going to say please. What is my intention in saying what I need to say? Is it to be right? Is it to make sure my message is heard? Or is it to, in this circumstance that we're talking about right now, make sure that I get to see my child? And if the parent is saying, well, I'm not going to do that because that's not right, I shouldn't have to do that, maybe you should not. Maybe you should not have to do the thing that is necessary in this case to do to see your child. If your intention is to see your child, you may have to make some choices that you do not want to make, maybe you should not have to make, but is necessary to make to get the result that you want. In conflict, that's just kind of how it goes. So to your question of what is successful, sometimes it's putting yourself aside for your goal. It is creating your goal first. What is the goal? Is the goal to see the child? Is the goal to prove something to the other parent? Is the goal to get your message out there? What is the goal? You can reach your goal if your goal is to make sure that they know you're not going to do anything that you shouldn't have to do. You can do that. That may not get the result that you want though. So I think I would start with that. What is your goal?
That's really helpful, just for you to put it in that context. And I heard a little something about you being a family therapist. Is mediation maybe a factor? Like third party, is that really it goes one way?
It can. again, it's a choice, right? So both parties have to be willing, and sometimes both parties are not willing. So to your point about the goal, if your goal is to see your child and this parent is just not allowing it to happen, you're putting all the blocks up. If your goal is to have a relationship with your child, maybe that relationship is not going to happen until they're 18. And that's sad. It's really sad, and it should not be true, but that might be what happens, because at 18, that child can make the choices that you're not able to control this other parent. You're just not able to control what they do and what they allow you to do. And sometimes we want to force people to do things. None of us want to be forced. None of us want to be told what you better do or what you have to do. Nobody really reacts to that very well. Yet we continue to do it. We continue to try to force somebody and say, you better and you must. None of us really react well to that. So if this parent who is being unjust and unfair and not allowing you to see your child, yes, that's going to affect the child. That is a fact. The fact that you're not in that child's life is going to affect that child. However, there can be a change and a shift in that relationship once they turn 18 or once they're able to see themselves, and you can create a relationship going forward. That 0 to 18 could have been, but it's not. We have to deal with what it is, right? So it didn't happen. 18 going forward, there's many years, hopefully, right? After 18, where we can create a relationship. Let's do that.
That was helpful.
Yeah, that was good. I think that what you said is so important, and to understand that children are helpless. And so if they live with a parent who wants the child to have nothing to do with you, the child is not going to go against that parent because their livelihood depends on that parent feeding them food, water, shelter. So they're not going to go against that parent and say, oh, but I like this parent, I want to go there, because they know they can't provide for themselves. So oftentimes, no matter what you do, a child won't come to you because they know that they got to live there and they're going to get in trouble or whatever the story is. But I think to your point, and it was in my case, is that when my kids left, I just had to do my own work and know that I had to do what I wanted to do that made me feel good about trying to stay in touch with my kids. I could put my head on the pillow at night and know I did everything I could. And then when they did go off to school, college, they both came back to me because they're independent thinkers and they're away and they can now have a relationship with me. But my job was to not be resentful, angry, and say the horrible things that
That's right.
I wanted to. And so really it is, yeah. And so my message to all of my clients is a message of faith, because that's when, you have to bring, in my opinion, God into it and just say, I don't understand why it's not my time right now to be a parent, but it's not. And and this is where the rubber meets the road of being Christ-like, and you got to walk the walk and forgive. And so there's a lot of stuff I can say about that, and I won't, because that's not why we're here. But you just ultimately do what you think is right to know you've done your part, even if it's that small.
I think that's inspirational. I'm sorry, I think that's inspirational. I can tell you from the scope of being a Black man, it's difficult. It's extremely difficult because not only are you fighting, or not fighting, you're fighting for your children against the person that you had a relationship that you were intimate with. But it's also disheartening because of the disconnect between the traditional system and Black males. We don't have trust and faith that they will do right by us. For example, when I was in Hammond, Indiana, living with the mother of my children and my it was a situation where the mother of my children was belligerent and the cops were called. And because the home wasn't under her name, like, I thought that the cops would be under, on my side, because she was being belligerent, disrespecting the children, the neighbors, and the police came up to me and said, literally, I kid you not, we are in a mother state. The mother of your children can be a crackhead. We will be inclined to give the kids to them. I was like, really? I go to work every day, support my children, make sure that they're fed, clothed. I tell them affirmations all the time, lifting up to love, kings and queens in the making. And you're telling me that this woman who's showing ill intent for my children and herself and me, that she has access to my kids, really put me to a dark space. I know individuals right now who are in sunken spaces because they don't have relationships with the mother of their kids, not because they don't want to be there, it's because that they were, like I said, parental alienation. They don't feel comfortable going to courts about this. It was inspirational, and the reason that I'm here right now is because of Brother Nehemiah has been fighting this case for 7 years and representing himself. So I thought that was extremely incredible. And I was like, wow, you have the strength to do it on your own. Like, to fight, like, don't have a lawyer to represent yourself, but you're still fighting this case? That's crazy. So what is my excuse? So things like that can be inspirational to our community because it's needed.
Thank you for that. And I'm gonna use this moment to let April chime in. April, I'm gonna put you on speaker.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can I be heard?
Yes, you can.
You're muted, Benign, so she can't hear you say yes.
Yes, you can hear us. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, sorry about that. So, yeah, first of all, Bernard, I just want to commend you. I want to apologize that you have to experience this parent alienation because, one, we just have entirely too many Black fathers that are not involved in your children's life for absolutely no justifiable reason other than just bitterness. So I apologize on behalf of Black women, and I commend you also for continuing to fight to be a part of your children's life. Emily, I commend you for taking the high road, but as a parent, I just feel like, and as a victim of parent alienation, one of the things that I encountered was wondering why my mother did not fight for me. Why did she not fight to come see me? I know what I heard. I know what was said. I know what I saw from my lens as a child. But growing up in those years between 0 and 18 are so important for a child to be involved with your child, with your parents, or parents, both parents actually. But if you only have one, it's pivotal. It's in their formative years. So I am a fighter, regardless. And one of the things that I did not, and I don't know if you guys heard me previously, but my ex moved out of state. So he did not have the day-to-day connection with our children like I did. And that bothered me to hell because I felt like they needed to be involved with their father, regardless of what was going on between us. They needed to be involved with him. And the fact that he took that stance and moved to a different state, moved him from being that parent and that's so important for them. So my response would be, if you cannot be nice and cordial and co-parent, then the only option, which should be the last resort, is go to the court and fight like hell. Because and it's not to fight against the parent, but fight for your child to be involved and don't be selfish about it, because the message here is that our children should come first. They need us. So we need to be there. We need to do whatever, by all means necessary, to be involved in our children's life. That's just it from, in black and white for me. Do what you need to do to be involved. And if that means I have to go to court, I have to fight on my own, or as pro se, or conjure up some money to get an attorney to be in my child's life, that child needs you. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that.
I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing that. And you guys heard it. Do whatever you got to do to be in your child's life. exhaust all resources, and if it has to go to the courts, she said she didn't want to go to the courts, but if it gets to that point, you gotta exhaust your resources, because ultimately we're trying to make sure that the children are being taken care of, that they're well, and that they're raised well, and their developmental milestones are met, and they're not traumatized because of these kinds of experiences that they're having to encounter due to family members not being able to deal with some of these issues at home.
Yeah, I'm glad you both mentioned the topic of resources, because I think that's an area that parents, at least from my experience, my interactions, feel that there's a lack or lacking the right resources to support themselves in their journey to care for their children and get back in the lives of their children. Are we aware, and this is not just a question I have for the panel, for the audience, for people online, and of course you, April, as part of the panel and online. Is anyone aware of any standing resources that are really reliable in helping people get back in the lives of their children? Please speak
Well,
up.
I think that website I gave, but it's pasg.info. So pasg.info, Parental Alienation Support Group, or Study Group, I think it is, .info is great. If I can just go back and say one thing to what she was talking about a second ago, and exhausting resources. I also think, though, on the flip side, is that everybody's made differently in our pain tolerance, and when we are married, also fighting for a child can really be very stressful and taxing. And I'm not suggesting don't do it, but I think we have to look at the whole entire system. And another thing I want to say really quick is that what is the most loving and kind thing we can do for our kids? Because when we see that we're in more pain for our kids, fighting for them, sometimes then we have to let them go, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
The trauma.
the trauma of fighting.
Traumatizing.
Yeah, I mean, from my son, when he was in 4th grade and got an ulcer from the stress, and he started going hot, and I'm like, you know what? I love you enough to let you go. I mean, it killed me, but I couldn't do it to him anymore. So, I mean, I think that you have to kind of look at that as well. This is so difficult. It's such a complex topic we're talking about. Yeah.
And it's always unique. Like there's no standard case, so it's case by case. I saw we had a hand in the audience, Ms. Fitzgerald.
Hi, I'm Lauren. And I want to piggyback off of that because one of the things that I'm ADD, so this is not a sign of disrespect, this is me trying to pay attention. So one of the things I've been absorbing as I'm listening to this is just all the trauma everybody's taking in, whether it be child or parent, and I'm like, we have to figure out a way to center the community of self, because if we don't put our mask on, we don't put our air mask on first, we can't put it on somebody else. So I just wanted to center self-care in this space, but also centering self-care could mean, making sure we have our children in our world. So that's what I wanted to offer.
Thank you for that, Lauren. That was much needed anecdote. Reminder of self-care. On that note, let's all take a breath. We're gonna practice some breath works, breath 5. Well, maybe not breath 5. Y'all, we are at 3:20 currently, and we have about 40 minutes left. I want to really have an opportunity to open up the floor for questions, both online and in person. But before doing that, I do want to present a couple of questions for the discussion. And if you're here, you can feel free to visit on our right side of the room. We have detractors, right? We have questions about the impact of alienation, why people may choose to do this, and where it's rooted. But on the left side, we have some solutionary items, right? We have items on talking about what are some strategies and habits for healthy co-parenting, maybe some you've observed, some you're even practicing, as well as are there ways that family and friends can offer support to individuals that are journeying through co-parenting or are about to journey through co-parenting. So I do want to present those as some discussion questions for us both in person and online. But at this time, I want to thank our panelists one more time. Y'all been so amazing. And I want to open up the floor for questions. Yeah. But nice, let us know what we got.
All right, I will whenever they come through. Do you have any questions?
Sure. Touched on the extended family in earlier discussion. I don't know for the state of Tennessee legally what rights grandparents or uncles and aunts have outside of the birth mother, birth father, but what rights they have in trying to initiate contact, even if there's a justifiable reason for the natural parent not to have contact. Is there a legal fight for their extended family to maintain contact?
I am no attorney, but I work in the court system a lot, and I do know that it is so difficult to, one, take a child away from a parent, much less for then a grandparent to come in and say, I want,
Visitation
Mhm.
or
It is so difficult. Yeah, I've got a couple of cases right now where the grandparents are alienated from their grandchildren, and both cases look pretty dismal. But that's two cases. Yeah, I am one person with one opinion. I don't know, but I know that it is pretty difficult. But I suppose it depends on the situation too.
I have a personal experience, not necessarily with extended family, but when I was getting my divorce, I asked the question of if something happened to me and I wanted to put in my will or in my directives who I wanted my child to go to, and that was my mother, because my mom is like my child's second parent. That's the person that he sees most besides me, right? If I wanted my child to go to them, is that possible? The court told me, basically no, that I could put that in there and I could suggest it, but that they have the ability to decide where my child goes. The court has the authority to say, and most times it's going to be with the other parent. So, and I want to preface this by saying my child's father is not a horrible parent. That's not what was happening at that time. We won't go into details. So it wasn't me saying I don't want him with his father, but in my situation, it was better for him to be with. We'll consider it, but we're going to look at can the child go with the father because that's the
And I actually have a question now that we bring that topic up, because of family support, because I want to bring that in the context of support for parents who may be going through divorce, and especially in the African American community. We know a lot of people are very religious, and the church is a big source of support. But when it comes to divorce, right, there's no one to provide that support because it's so frowned upon that the community that you thought you once had, when you're dealing with something like divorce, they're nowhere to be found. So has that been an issue? And how can we get these organizations like churches and the network of support that we have in there to provide whatever kind of accommodations or resources to mitigate the impact that it's going to have on the children.
Just like I asked for how these additional groups you think should offer support.
Because or like if people want to share like personal experience with the church or friend groups that not providing support because they didn't necessarily agree with the divorce, and kind of bringing that to how can we get support when we're going through these kinds of issues that other people might not co-sign, but that doesn't mean we still don't need help, right? So, who do we run to if the church is all we got, and now the church is turning their back on us?
I can say personally, if it wasn't for some of my personal close friends from Fisk University and supporting family members on my side of the family, I would be a broken man right now. So I thank God for them. But I think resources are limited, or they're not known about. Because if I would have known that there was somebody who could assist me with fighting this battle, I would have did that a long time ago. But I was under the impression that I was in this battle by myself. So, and I think that a lot of people share the same thoughts that I had. So how do you combat that? What support group is out there? Like, I'm asking you.
Two things for me. One reason why I want to support the Black Mental Health Alliance of Nashville so much is because I feel like we should have a place, a resource for us to know where to go for different things. So I love this question. I love that we're trying to do this, and I don't have the answer as to exactly where to go, but I want that to be true, that yes, in the Black community, our religion, our church family, our spirituality is probably our first resource. And to your point, it is frowned upon in most churches to have, most religions to have, to get a divorce. One thing I think can be helpful is realizing that the church, realizing that we can look at the church not as one whole organization, right? The church could mean so many different things, right? My church may frown upon it, but maybe another one does not. One religion may, and maybe another one does not. And even within my church, maybe the pastor frowns upon it, but the first lady does not, right? So understanding that we may have a resource that we're not looking for because we make the assumption that this organization, this church, this person is not going to support us when it may not be true.
There's a online support group called Parental Alienation -Anonymous. So it mimics the Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. So you can get on that online, but then also if you Google, which I just did to get that support group, Parental Alienation online support, there's a whole ton of information that pops up. So Professor Google always is our.
And as you're telling me, I'm putting them on our ticker so people who are watching our videos can check them in real time. So thank you for that.
That leads me to an additional question. Oh, you know what? It's not my turn to ask questions. And I wanted to just jump in and say, if April has something to say, want to give her the floor for a moment.
To feedback on what Monet, what Monet had stated.
Comment, I'm not sure if I'm but just pointing out that a lot of times we only speak out or say something about our situation to one particular group of people or one set of
I do think that having just experienced different variations of the side of this coin is like, I've experienced the most support when I actually have said I really needed help, or this is what's going on. And a lot of times just verbalizing it gets the energy out there so that whoever you believe in, wherever you believe in, can at least lead you toward people that would be willing to help you. So I think a lot of times if you could just expand your resources outside of the ones that you do know, exploring online groups, exploring other friend groups, and just even if you hear somebody in the grocery line talking about something, and you know, and taking some information up from people that you find that there are a lot more resources available. And there's even like lawyers that do pro bono work for like masculines or like for fathers that are alienated. So never feel like there actually isn't resources, because there usually is something for somebody that would be willing to assist. If you see something.
I love that. Thank you. Put a little love and passion, energy out there. Like, go ahead, just ask what you need for. I gotta ask this question. I know it's not my time to ask. I gotta ask this question because I like to be preventive or proactive as people. So, we know this won't be an exhaustive list, but is there a list or are there some action items, steps y'all would encourage parents to take if they know they are about to begin co-parenting, whether they are having a child with someone they're not going to be in union with, whether they are in union but about to separate? Are there some action items you say you want to make sure you insulate the family, the child? You want to make sure you have a meet. I don't know what the steps are, but if there are some items I would suggest, put this down on your list.
Yeah, I have suggestions.
Let's do it.
So this is going back to me as a therapist, right? It's gonna sound basic, but communication and what you were just saying about expectations, that is one of the biggest things that can cause conflicts is unspoken expectations. And what I mean by that is should do or should know. And when that person doesn't do that, you operate off of what you thought they should have done, but you're not voicing it, you're not saying it. So the same thing that I would say to a premarital couple, someone who is about to get into a relationship, let's talk about all of the things. Some of the things you think your partner knows about you, or some of the things you think you know about how they feel may not be true. So let's just get it on the table, talk about it, set expectations that are spoken for the relationship. Same thing's gonna happen going out of the relationship, going into a co-parenting. Let's talk about it. This is not always possible because feelings are feelings, emotions are emotions, and people are people, and people will people. So people are gonna do what they're gonna do, and if you're at high emotion, this is not the time when we're able to best speak, when we're best able to make decisions. That's not the time that we're able to do it. And it's always emotional, whether the split is wanted or not, whether I asked for the divorce or not, whether I asked for the relationship to end or not, it's always emotional. So that's not an easy time to have these conversations. So I want to preface it with that. It's not always easy to have conversations, but it is necessary. Just talk about the expectations. Okay, what does this look like? What are you looking for? What do you need from me? What do we want for our child? These are just kind of some of the questions that we're asking, right? Like what are you looking for? Are we looking for equal time? Is that what you want? Or is it okay with you that I have the child all the way through the week and you have them on the weekends? Is that okay? Because I may be expecting that you want 50-50 and maybe you don't. Maybe you're fine with me having the child for 2 weeks and you see the child every other weekend. So let's just have the conversations. And as we were talking about, somebody mentioned mediator, I think that's you, and we're talking about mediation. Yes, maybe the person that you know in your family or your friend group that you know that the other person will listen to or hear from, and that you will, that's going to be a non-biased party. Maybe they can be in the conversation to help out. And as a therapist, I can be that person, right? Like, a therapist is helpful. I'm not gonna go down the tangent that I want to go down about how helpful therapy is and what therapy means and all of those things, but I'll say this, therapy is not just because you're crazy, not because you're feeling crazy. Therapy is a place where a person who does not know you and know your situation can hear your situation and from a professional lens offer strategies, suggestions, insight, thoughts that you may not have. So the same thing can happen with this couple is what I'm saying. If you go in and you see a therapist as a couple and you're about to co-parent, maybe this person who has not heard your story, does not know you personally, does not like you over you, will have a suggestion that can help you guys, and you'll be willing to listen to that person rather than listening to the other person.
I knew it, Marlene. Therapy is always an answer. On the Black Mental Health Alliance, every time. Thank you for that. That was great. Some other suggestions?
Well, the other thing is, in terms of setting expectations, might be just understanding that you can't co-parent and that less is more, and to disengage and go with that good enough parenting idea, and that you divorce or separate, whatever, not together for a reason. And so understanding that his way is not gonna be your way, and that as long as there's not neglect or abuse happening, there's not a lot you can do, and so disengaging and not trying to control the other person.
I already said something, but I want to say something else.
Oh, yes.
This is from personal experience, right? So in divorcing my ex-husband, he parents differently than me, right? And I'm right about everything, right? Because that's just how self-centered and person-centered we are, right? Like we think we have the right way. So I'm like, no, it should be done this way. It should be done. It shouldn't be done that way. It should be done this way. I'm speaking to a friend, and she says, the influence that my child is going to get from his father, the male influence, the way that he's parented differently by that parent is necessary, whether you like it or not. He's gonna have two different styles of parenting, but that's okay if the way that you are parenting, you are loving on the other parent as far as not saying anything hateful, not alienating the parent with verbiage or anything like that, and you are continuing to teach your child the right way. Because there is going to be a point where that child is going to be able to make their own decisions and be able to take what they're getting from both sides and say, okay, I think this does apply here and this is what mom says, or me, I'm not a male. I can't give him a male experience or perspective. If he is rougher than I want him to be and louder than I want him to be, he'll be okay. That's not detrimental to his health. It's just not what I would prefer, maybe. So both perspectives are, what is the word I'm looking for? Not necessary, but welcome.
And that's life anyway, because we gotta figure out how to adjust in situations that are tough.
I can't control it. You can't control the other person. So just let it be and let it be known that it's gonna happen. You just do, like you said, your best to put in the energy that you want in there. And that's all I can do as a mother.
We
we have a question Facebook from Alfred L. Brady, and then we'll get to you. If someone is stuck and needs to get court help, what would you suggest would be the first step?
Needs to get court help.
Yeah, for a parental alienation. And Alfred, if I'm not getting your question correctly, feel free to add on. But if they need help, getting resources, help with court, where would they start?
The website I gave, Parental Alienation Study Group, that has a list of therapists around the country that are able to help. It's important that you find an attorney, if you're gonna go that route, that has an understanding of parental alienation, and also a therapist, because if a therapist doesn't understand what that is and the dynamics of it, they can act more damage than help. So that's important. And then, you know, if you're gonna do pro se, meaning you're gonna represent yourself, then to get online and familiarize yourself with the diagnosis of it, the 5-factor model, because you're gonna need to know a lot about it if you're gonna try to go into court. So either get a well-versed attorney, therapist, either one could help you get to the right resource and guide you through that process.
Perfect. And that website again is pasg.info.
Yes.
And I put that on the ticker. Thank you for the question, Alfred. And now we'll go to May. May, you have a question?
Yeah, so basically I was wondering about, like, in terms of parental alienation, or just in terms of not having another one of the parents around, whether that person chooses to alienate themselves from you, how does that like manifest in your adulthood? Like what are some examples of the long-term effects in terms of attachment style or something like that?
May, you've been doing some homework.
Yeah, I'm trying to be a social worker.
Future social worker.
So I think it's very vital because you learn from your parents. Like, you see and you idolize the people who raised you, and you form opinions based upon their beliefs and their styles. So that indirectly or directly, like, impacts the relationship that you have, whether you know it or not. I'll tell you, like I told you earlier, my parents have been together for 37 years. Hasn't always been peaches and creams. It's been fights, it's been headaches, heartaches, but it's been a lot of good. And so I was taught, like, hey, I'm here for my significant other. But that can be detrimental because, like I said earlier, if the person doesn't have the same goals and aspirations as you, and you guys aren't equally yoked, it could be a bad situation. So because you already have these pre-notions that you're supposed to be here regardless, it can negatively impact your life because you have this notion, but the person who you're supposed to be engaged with doesn't, and it impacts not only your decision-making abilities, how you see you overthink sometimes about the other person's intentions, and it can be really, really devastated without understanding, the trauma that you already went through because of, your beliefs of your parents or the beliefs of the people who brought you up. So it does impact who you are. Well, I answered that. I know I was all over the place.
Have you heard a female say, I don't have female friends, I don't trust females? This is not exhaustive, it's not the only reason. But what if one of the reasons that female doesn't trust other females is because she doesn't trust her mother? And the reason that she doesn't trust her mother is because her father or the father's family or the grandmother painted a picture of who the mother is. And maybe the mother was not trustworthy. However, if the other family members could have loved on that mother in a way that helped frame what this daughter thought of her mother, it could have been helpful. Speaking of from personal experience, you heard of daddy issues. So my brother and I, same father. Again, when my mom birthed my son, it was at the end of their marriage, and so my father didn't want to accept my little brother. I noticed, this is through therapy and through life and being the age that I am, that both of us, not having our father as active as he could have been in our life, needed or wanted a lot of attention from your partner, right? And how that shows up is maybe when the other person comes to you and they're always there and they always want to be around you, that looks like love. because my experience of love from my father was absence. And if I interpreted that as he did not love me, then the opposite of that is if you're around me all the time, you do love me. That is not a bad trait to look for in a person, someone that wants to be around you, but that is not a foundational, it doesn't mean that it's a foundational piece. Oh, they're around me, so they love me. So one way that it can show up is that just replacing what you didn't get from your father with what someone gives you in a relationship with them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic. This can be friendships. Trying to get that from somewhere else, and you get it in a way where you're trying to fill what you didn't get, which does not happen. It does not get filled that way. That's not how it works. So that means it's constant. That means all of the relationships kind of look the same. They kind of, have that same flavor because it's not quite doing what you thought it was going to do. So you continue to do that same thing.
Yeah.
That's how it can that's one way.
That's exactly how I am too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say too, if we look from a child's perspective, children are egocentric, meaning they believe everything is done and do them for them. So if a parent does not want to be with a child, the child will say, well, what's wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, they will put who they are, the essence of themselves. They'll say, well, you're not good enough. I'm going to put you over here. And now I'm going to start developing masks and who do you want me to be? And then I'm going to start doing whatever I can to make you like me. And so as we grow up, our self is over here, but the masks they get exercised, they get defined. And so we are really good at our mask, except that we don't really know who we were. And so we always end up kind of with this emptiness, which is kind of what you're talking about, because we're not connected. We're connected to a faith, a mask, but we're not connected to ourselves. And so the idea is to get connected back to yourself. And that's hard. I remember when I started my journey, because I didn't know who I was. All I knew is that I liked my couch and I liked a scented candle. And that's all I knew about myself. And and as a result of being empty, I tried to fill myself up with all kinds of stuff. And so, again, I won't get on my tangent about faith, but and we fill ourselves up with the real thing. But anyway, but so then, and as a result of all that, the attachment style, there's a great book called Attached, and it talks about anxious attachments and avoidance. And then there's disorganized, which is hopefully none of us have that. And then there's just kind of this normal attachment. So you might look at that as well, attachment styles. But
I actually ended up, because of the masking thing, I'm pretty sure that I developed a personality disorder because of that.
Sure. Well, you probably had a lot of childhood trauma too, right? Because a lot of the research now is that personality disorders are really as a result of childhood trauma, and yes, genetics as well, but childhood trauma can create dissociative personality disorder, and certainly borderline personality disorder, narcissistic. So yeah, it's great that you know that about yourself, though.
Very self-aware.
Right, because then you can do something, as much as you can. Yeah.
And for the people in the room or online who don't know what we're talking about when we say attachment styles, just a quick reference about when you're a child, you attach to your caretakers a certain way. There's a way that you attach, and we want a secure attachment. We want a child to both be okay with you leaving the room and to want to see you when you're in the room, right? We want an equal balance of how someone is attached to their caretaker. I say caretaker because it's not necessarily the parent. It's not always the parent, right, that you're attaching to. But when we don't have that, we attach different ways. So think of a person who says one thing of what they want you to do or how they want you to love, and then they do another. It's not a secure way that they're attached, so they're asking for something that they're not giving, or they're asking for something that they're not showing, or or when you give it, it's not enough. I'm not getting into the technical terms and the technical ways, but just the basics of it is we want to be secure. And so when we don't securely attach as a young person, as a baby, as a child, it shows up when you grow up. And if you've ever been around a person who, if I'm in a relationship with you and I'm calling you, where are you? Are you coming back? Are you gonna be home soon? Or where are you going? Who are you with? Right? Because maybe I'm not attached very well. I'm not securely attached, so I'm thinking that you're always gonna leave me. My attachment is that I'm not securely attached, so I'm always wondering, am I going to be left? And that could have happened because of some trauma that happened in my childhood where I was left, where I was not able to securely attach to the caretaker around me.
Wow, yeah, crash course on attachment styles. Very needed. That book, Attached, you said, Emily, who's that by? Doctor somebody?
Somebody.
We can find that. This has been a phenomenal panel. We are down to our last 10 minutes, so I'm not sure if we have any, I'm not sure that we can really dive into any additional questions, but I would like to, offer some closing remarks to our panel. Want to share something? Benice, we want to shoot me over, make sure I don't want to miss any acknowledgments here.
Yeah, I got you. I'll send that now. And one last question, and it's around wrapping up, is what are you taking from this talk, and how are you going to change the way you approach your family or your practice?
Is that for the audience?
It could be for the audience, but for the panelists in terms of, as well.
What are you taking
away from this talk?
And, we haven't heard from April in a while. Is April still with us?
Absolutely.
Hey, April. How you been, love?
I'm here. I'm listening. I was trying to chime in, but I guess you didn't see my message, but that's okay.
No, we hear you loud and clear now, April. We have a final question. I think that's for the whole panelists. I think it coincides with the closing remarks, right? So, what are you taking, and how are you going to proceed from this panel and this talk today?
You guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So wow, there was a lot of good stuff said. The personal story just caused me to do some more reflection, and just in the way how I handle things as a parent, to make sure that my interactions with my children. Do I need to, just asking myself, do I need to pivot on some of the things that, I need to change on, and how my children continue to interact with their dad as well as interact with me, because they're around me most of the time. So I am their biggest influence. So I need to make sure that my childhood trauma does not, come into our home, and I need to become more aware of how that has impacted me as a parent, and again, how they interact with their father. So that's first and foremost. I think one of my takeaways is to make sure that I have that clear understanding, and for my children, and then also for their mental health as well. And again, it's important for us to try and curb this generational person by changing the way that and learning and changing the way that we respond to how we parent. I did want to say that communication is really important when co-parenting, and so that we're not alienating the other parent during the co-parenting process. And I know what's been effective for me is, as it was shared with me before, that you have to take the part husband and wife and attach it as a partnership. And really deal with that as a business partnership. So if communicating via phone or in person is not working for you, then use other sources like texting or emailing so that you're communicating exactly what you need, is direct, short, brief, and just keep the common goals in the forefront, which is, supposed to be for your children. That's my takeaway, and that's the last advice that I would like to provide when co-parenting, so that you aren't excluding the other parent.
Wonderful. Thank you, April. We heard you loud and clear.
Thank you so much.
And I'm just going to encourage us to backtrack. So we started with Monet and we went to April. So if we can go same way back.
Okay. What I took away from this is understanding the expectation of your significant other before you produce children will be vital. But if it does get to parental alienation, don't be afraid to reach out to individuals who currently or in the past people in the same situations, get some words of encouragement. Utilize all resources around you. I thank God for Black Men, Anti-Q, and the Mental Alliance program, because resources like that, I didn't know anything about. So don't be afraid to reach out to individuals and push come to shove. Don't be afraid of the legal system, because at the end of the day, you got to do any and everything to be there for your children. So that's what I took away.
I took away just being appreciative of being invited to this and being a part of this community. I very much appreciate it, and I enjoyed hearing a lot of what you said. And you too. It's always good to hear different perspectives.
I really appreciate you speaking to your experience. That I think is just vital for us to have real life experience, stories of how it affects people. We need to humanize our issues, and this is a way to know that there are humans attached to the other side of what we're talking about. And April, because I really appreciate just coming back with how it has been for you, April, and how, what your experience has been like, both as a child of and a parent of in both of those situations. Again, back to the humanization, because, as a professional, I'm speaking on the lens of how we want it to look and the best ways and the best practices and, how to do it, but it doesn't always turn out that way. And I very much appreciate hearing how it does look and being reminded that there are humans behind these theories and thoughts and
Thank you, everyone who is in attendance, and thank you so much to our panel, both from your personal experience and your professional experience. This was a very fruitful panel. Our groups, I wanted to just note Black Mental Health Alliance, of course, our foremost sponsor, Hood Medicine, Stuck in the Middle, and of course, MenIQ, the MenIQ Network. These beautiful people, hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and we'll be back hopefully before the end of this year with another talk on this topic.
Thank you so much.